everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another awesome episode of On the Throttle with Jacqui Van Ham, and my buddy Josh is here, bringing you all of the newest of the new news going on in motorcycle land. We've got lots of great new news going on today, and it is the magical time of year, Josh's most favorite event. It is like Mardi Gras for Josh. That is Daytona Bike Week is coming up. So I have got some super beep breaking news going on later on in the show. So make sure you stick around. You are not going to want to miss it. I've got that coming up. I've got a little bit of Isle of Man news as well. And Josh, what do you have going on in your neck of the woods?
So there were some recently found spy photos of, I'm sure someone just camped outside of someone's factory. I'm sure it was probably someone that worked for that factory that's like, we'll just throw these out underneath the table. But still interesting news with that. And there's some GNCC news that means, hey, we're going to be able to watch more racing this year. So I'm excited about both of those.
Well, that is just totally on the nose for today's conversation, Josh, because we are talking all sorts of amazing racing going on. My very first story for today, just real quickly, this just hit the interwebs, and I am very, very excited about it, in case you can't tell. The Isle of Man is back. This is absolutely one of my bucket list items, this historical race that has been going on for well over 100 years. The Isle of Man is back after its COVID-related hiatus, and even better, if you can't afford that big ticket to head on over to go check the Isle of Man for yourself, which happens, by the way, this spring. It is coming up very, very soon. It is going on from May, what's the date? May 28th through June 1st, do I have that right? It is going on at the end of May, beginning of June. If you are not aware, I was right, May 28th to June 11th is when that's happening. Anywho, if you can't afford that big high dollar ticket, don't fret, my friends, because the Isle of Man, for the very first time in its entire history, is going to be broadcasting the entire thing. Mind blown. How on earth are they going to cover all of this action? We're all going to have to tune in to find out. They're going to be streaming it live on a new platform that they are developing, of course. It is going to cost some money. Yes, it will, of course, but it sounds very reasonable to me for literally like 15-hour days worth of racing action. The producers of this incredible broadcast are also throwing around the words like Drive to Survive, the Formula One docuseries that's been on Netflix for the past handful of years. That is just incredible. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. But it is full of the drama. And the folks that are running this broadcast said, we watched that, we're inspired by that, but the Isle of Man has way more history, way more drama, way more intense racing. So they are totally convinced that this is going to be a slam dunk, and I completely agree. I cannot wait to tune in. Josh, what do you think about this news?
So Isle of Man is something that I've always, kind of same thing, bucket list item. I've always loved seeing it. When you see some of the names that have come through there, Carl Fogarty, came through with Isle of Man fame. And on top of that, when you watch the sidecar racing, so not only do you have people at 100 plus miles an hour touching walls with their shoulder, but you have someone hanging off of the side of a sidecar doing that, which to me is just, it's the ultimate street Rossi event for people that, yes, this is just insanity.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm clearly a big Isle of Man fan. There are just bottomless, endless storylines and tales and of saga and heartbreak and triumph and shenanigans and excellent racing and catastrophe. I'm not going to lie, the Isle of Man is probably one of the most dangerous races still in existence today. It is a very incredibly grueling, very difficult race. I personally am looking forward to it. I think the producers are spot on that this is going to be just action-packed and full of drama, and I cannot wait. This all happens, like I said, the 28th of May, running through the beginning of June. So make sure you go check out the interwebs and keep an eye out for that. Now, what do you have going on for your first story for today, Josh?
So when KTM was coming out with the 390 Adventure, everyone was super psyched about this bike because, here it's smaller, it's more compact, it's A, less intimidating for people that just want to get into it, and B, we're going to end up with a lot less weight, and we're going to end up with a ton of maneuverability and all these other items. it kind of missed the mark for what a lot of people were looking for on it, because you've got items like a little bit squattier suspension, you've got cast wheels on it, and it seemed to be a Duke that would go a little bit more off-road, we'll say. And if Ashley, if you want to pull up that first photo there, this is what we ended up with, which, don't get me wrong, is really a great bike, and it's a very cool bike. But for people that want something smaller and more nimble out of an adventure bike, it missed some of the mark, especially when you realize that kind of in this area, you've got something as great as the CRF 300L to compete with. Well, on the next slide, we have a spy photo, and there was a few of them that were out there, of what appears to be the KTM, possibly 390 Adventure R. Now, a couple of the things that you see that tell you that this is different is that triangle that you see in the center of the bike there. That's an aluminum mount. It's actually got the engine a little bit lower. The other thing, and you could see it in a couple of other photos, is the frame actually has a little bit of oxidation on it, meaning, hey, if we're going to cut and weld this thing about 30 times, we're probably not going to spend the time to paint it. The seat's a little rough. The bodywork, you could tell, is stolen off of other bikes and stuff like that. So this is still very much a prototype thing. But when you look at it, we've got the 21-inch front wheel, the 18-inch rear wheel. There is a new billet swing arm, and it's billet, which could be part of the prototyping phase. They might go to cast, whatever. But it is a new swing arm compared with the other one, with the current 390. So the big question that I have with this, and to me, this is the one that, especially price point, everything like this checks all the boxes. If it has the features that the current 390 Adventure has, with a little longer legs and the different wheels and a few other tweaks to it, I think this is great. My big question is, do you think the world gets to see it? What are your thoughts, Jacqui?
Well, I think it's definitely really interesting. I love the idea of this micro adventure bike. Being part of the 5.2 crew, I'm always down for something that's a little bit smaller in displacement, assuming that it possibly means it also is going to have a little bit smaller or lower seat height, I should say. So maybe this is going to be competing with that BMW G310 GS. Maybe they're trying to duke it out, pun intended, and be in that space. Who knows? We're all gonna have to wait and find out. You like that? Who's dropping the dad jokes today, Josh?
I
don't know what's going on over there. Are you sleeping?
That was my job. I thought that was my job with the dad jokes. I feel threatened now. I agree with you.
The spy photo is really interesting to me because it is so rough. This is such a kind of hodgepodge. I mean, there's rust going on this bike. So I'm not really totally convinced that this is a spy photo. I'm not quite sure what's happening here. I don't know if this is something that somebody just mocked up and is making in their free time, or if they've really been taking this out and putting it through its paces. We're all going to have to wait and see. What do you think, Josh? Do you think this is real, or is this a unicorn?
Now I heard that it was pulling out of KTM property. So I heard that, but once again, it's that, are they going to take this the next level with it? And like I said, it's in this niche. Like I said, the CRF 300L has tall seat height. I mean, it's a great bike. It's the adventure bike that people want. So I'm wondering if KTM's like, we can offer that top echelon, which is what KTM does, and they do it really well. So they can offer that top echelon, but still compete in terms of the height and the weight and the off-road ability, which that's kind of what KTM does.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we will all have to wait and see. But I do like the looks of it. Yeah. It's got a great, clearly very adventure vibe to it. I think it's really exciting. We're just going to all have to kind of wait and see what happens. Speaking of wait and see what happens and exciting news, Josh, again, I know that this is your favorite time of year. I know you look forward to Daytona news and coleslaw wrestling at the Cabbage Patch. I know you are down for all things that happened down at Daytona. So today is dedicated, my second segment for today's show is dedicated to all things Daytona. I've curated a little list of awesome things that are going on for Daytona Bike Week, which is just around the corner. I'll be heading down there myself. So let's go ahead and throw some slides up. And then I have a super secret beep, 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 behind the scenes video. I was down in Charlotte with our team here at Babcock's shooting some video. I called a buddy of mine who's campaigning a bike in the King of the Baggers, and he let me come get some behind the scenes footage of this brand new race bike before anybody has ever seen it. That's here on the show, so make sure you stick around. So first things first, a great race that's going to be happening at the very beginning of Daytona Bike Week this year on March 5th at the new Smyrna Speedway. This is Billy Lane's Sons of Speed. This is an antique motorcycle race. This is very obviously, because it is antique, very Harley-Davidson and Indian motorcycle heavy. This is going to be literally antique, over 100-year-old machines, board track racing type bikes. There's also a class that is very hot and heavy with flatheads as well. So all very, very early machines going on. I'm going to go ahead and let you know that I am in on this scene. I'm going to be announcing this awesome event. I look forward to this every single year because it's not only seeing awesome early bikes run, it's watching them run and race, and it is absolutely incredible. The new Smyrna Speedway is a banked but paved surface, so the bikes get going really fast. They will absolutely hit 100 miles per hour, which watching a 120-year-old bike with no brakes do 100 miles per hour is pretty insane. Anyway, this goes on the very first weekend. This goes on March 5th. And my next slide is going to be the following week, just to give you the heads up at the same time, or actually I should say that same night, Saturday night, in case you just are not excited by 100-year-old motorcycles. That is also going to be the night for the Supercross round happening at Daytona International Speedway. That is the exact same night. That is also going to be March 5th out at Daytona. So make sure, if you are just not feeling like coming and seeing me or seeing Rad Old Bikes race, and if you're a Supercross fan, make sure you go check it out. That's also going on March 5th as well. The following day on my next slide is going to be a really neat antique and chopper bike show hosted by Warren Lane. I know it's a family affair. Mr. Billy Lane's brother Warren Lane hosts an event every single year. It's called the True Grit Bike Show. This is at the Broken Spoke Saloon. This happens on Sunday, March 6th at noon. If you've never been to Daytona or you're not familiar, a lot of these events happen during the day, by the way. Everybody kind of thinks Daytona is a party scene, which it is. I'm not going to lie. It's a big party scene, and that happens at night down on Main Street. But during the daytime is when a lot of the awesome racing and bike shows and custom bike shows and things happen. This goes on Sunday. Again, this is the True Grit. This is the Antique and Chopper Show, and Antique Choppers happening at the Broken Spoke Saloon. Also going on during Daytona Bike Week, if you want to go ahead and throw that next slide up, another really phenomenal bike show. This is custom bikes. This is choppers. This is weird stuff. This place is a scene, and this is Tropical Tattoos. This is going to be their show. This goes on every single year. This is Chopper Time. This is March 10th. That is going to be the Thursday afternoon. This is up north in Ormond Beach. This place is a scene. It is absolutely bananas. It is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of just amazing custom bikes, antique bikes, choppers, and then the real scene actually happens out on the street, because everybody rides, in case they don't show their bikes, everybody still rides their rad stuff there, and all of the parking lots and all of the streets surrounding this tattoo shop are just jam-packed full of rad bikes. I've seen vintage two-stroke race bikes there. I've seen choppers. I've seen new bikes. I've seen weird stuff. All sorts of rad stuff shows up at this place. This is one of my most favorite events of the week, and it happens on March 10th. That leads me to the second half of Daytona Bike Week, which is where we start getting into some awesome racing. And Miss Ashley, if you can go ahead and throw that video up. This is some rad behind-the-scenes footage from my friends at Indian Motorcycle of Charlotte and their Indian Motorcycle of Charlotte and Saddlemen race bike that they're going to be campaigning at the King of the Baggers the second weekend of Daytona. All right, and that awesome video footage again was from my buddy Tim, the owner of Indian Motorcycle of Charlotte. He took the time to pull out a couple of race machines that he's getting ready to prep again for that second weekend, March 10th through the 12th. That's happening at Daytona International Speedway. That is part of this great big huge. Of course, it's the Daytona 200. The whole reason Bike Week even exists is the Daytona 200, and then they're running in addition to that another handful of new classes, including King of the Baggers. Roland Sands is bringing his Super Hooligan race series there. That's right. This year they're going to be racing Super Hooligan bikes on pavement, which is some of the machines you saw in that little video clip. And then there's also a Twins Cup that Roland Sands is also participating in going on as well. So there is just all sorts of really interesting racing going on the 10th through the 12th at Daytona International Speedway. Again, it's the Daytona 200, it's King of the Baggers, it's Twins Cup, it's Super Hooligan. It is a ton of like Indian versus Harley Davidson grudge match racing going down at Daytona International Speedway, bringing all sorts of new fans to the racetrack. I have to admit and tell you, Josh, and I'm sure you understand and are going to agree with me, that I go every single year to Daytona. I've been going for 10 years now. I love this event, but it is definitely very V-twin heavy, which is cool. But I run into people at the track all week long that I'm down there for work, and they hear the racing going on and the practicing going on for the 200 and ask me what's going on at the track. They literally don't even know that there's a race happening, and that is the foundation of Bike Week, like 100%. It's the entire reason Bike Week even exists.
It's why it all started.
Daytona 200 has been going on since the late 1930s. It finally relocated to Daytona International Speedway in 1961. This is a huge historical race that has been going on. It used to happen on the beach. Literally, they would go up and down the sand, and then it went from the sand to where they made like a hairpin turn and hit asphalt and took the Highway 1 back down and then turned around again and hit sand and came back up sand on the beach. This is, almost 100 years of historical racing. Actually, over 100 years of historical racing going on. So it's very interesting to me that people have been going there now and don't know what the 200 is about. So here's the cool thing. So I think it's really interesting, this King of the Baggers, which I know you roll your eyes at and are not a huge fan of, but I think it's super dope because it's bringing these V-twin people back to the track, and it is absolutely working. They have had like packed races going on. This is now like their second 2.5-ish season, COVID time, who knows, but they've been doing this for the past handful of years, and they've absolutely just been crushing it with attendance, people coming, literally climbing off of their Harley Davidson, climbing off of their Indian motorcycle, going in, cheering for their bike, and then hanging out and watching the rest of the racing going on over the course of the weekend. So it's a really interesting, very cool marketing thing. But also some real heavy hitters are coming out to race. Kyle Wyman races. A whole bunch of professional racers come out now and are campaigning these bikes for these teams. And the bike that I just showed you, the reason why it's so important, and I made sure that we got footage of it, is because it's not just another V-twin racing at King of the Baggers. This is a brand new scenario. This is an air-cooled machine, which has way more flexibility in the rules, because Indian has been participating, not directly from a factory standpoint, but the Indian bikes that raced the past past year and a half or 2 years had been liquid cooled, and they had very, very narrow rules on them. Whereas the air cooled bikes, aka Harley Davidson bikes, had a lot more flexibility. Well, Tim and Indian Motorcycle of Charlotte and Saddlemen decided to put their heads together and decided to play by those sets of rules, and added a supercharger to an Indian Motorcycle Chieftain. I can't give away the numbers, but it is well over 150 horsepower is what that bike puts out, and it is going to be bringing a gun to a knife fight. It's going to be bananas. So I'm really pumped about that. So that's what's going on the 10th through the 11th, and then also I think I've got one more slide going on, and that's going to be talking about another race that's happening. Do not forget that this time of year also is the kickoff of the season for the folks over at American Flat Track Racing. Speaking of Indian Motorcycle going head-to-head with Harley Davidson, another race is happening. This year they've decided to relocate. They're racing at the Volusia Half Mile, which I am really stoked about. It was cool that they hosted it at Daytona International Speedway, but the track was garbage. Let's not play games here. It was
Right.
not a really cool way to do it, because they couldn't really do a road course because it's flat track racing. So they would pour a bunch of dirt and try to make, anyway, it just wasn't great. So Volusia is a proper dirt track, a proper half-mile track. I think it's the right place for it, and it's a double header. So this is going on March 10th and 11th, and that is the end of your Daytona Bike Week. That is all the rad stuff going on down there. Josh, what do you think about all of this kick-ass stuff going on at Daytona this year?
So what's funny is when you mention that, Indian, is racing is all about, and has always been all about, doing what you can within the rules to bend the rules to your advantage. And it's funny because when whoever wrote those rules said, yep, if it's air cooled, you get some more leeway, because obviously the air cooling, and especially the way Harleys are with that oversquare that we always talk about, you just can't spin them to get the horsepower out of them. Well, you take that Indian that's got a different design. Now we can get some ponies out of it. I noticed it's belt-driven supercharger run through an intercooler there, an air-to-air intercooler, so that way we don't cook anything. I think that one's going to be a fun one to watch. As far as like the King of the Baggers series, I do love the fact that it's brought the crowds back. I remember 20 years ago attending races at Mid-Ohio, and you were shoulder to shoulder with people at the races. It's nicer to see that happening again, and seeing the people there. I don't care who it is. They show up to support the racing and enjoy the racing. I dig it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they're following a playbook out of AFT. You know, American flat track racing has been
Yeah.
going on for a very long time. Flat track racing in general has been going on for a very long time in this country. But it kind of, same thing, it slowed way down in the 1990s-ish. And starting in, 2015 or 16, when Indian Motorcycle decided to start campaigning a bike again, the crowds have come back. It works. Bringing people out to cheer on. If they don't even know who's racing, they don't even know what's happening. I've worked those events. I've been to those races, and people literally are like, I don't know what's going on, but it's awesome. And I see a bike that has my badge on it, the same bike that I rode here on, and I'm here to cheer him on. And it totally works. And I think this was a really smart move, on behalf of Moto America and the folks who put this whole thing together. And then now Roland Sands getting in on this action. I think this is all just a lot of very smart moves. Yes, it's coming from a place of marketing, but it's also some inappropriate bike racing. And I got to tell you, that's at the top of my list of things that I love to watch. I love to watch bikes that shouldn't be doing what they're doing. I'm totally here for it. I love that stuff. So I'm really excited for Daytona. I'm really stoked to go down there. And I'll have hopefully some good news and good things going on when we get back, and we'll talk about what happens down there. But what do you have for your last story for today, Josh?
Speaking of people making bikes do things that they shouldn't do, the GNCC is a great way to see people getting bikes to do all sorts of things in the woods that you didn't think was possible. GNCC actually reported that they now have a number of multi-year sponsorship deals, which is great because we all know with racing, you got to have the sponsorships to make it happen. And you got to have the manufacturers, you got to have just everyone involved. You're right. Racing, my dad always used to joke, it's not about cubic inches, it's about cubic dollars. And the fact that we all get to see this is one of the things that I love. So GNC, they announced that they've got multi-year sponsorship deals, which I'm really glad to see, which means it's going to continue. Yamaha has a $480,000 contingency program. That's almost $500,000 that they're willing to put towards this, which to me is absolutely awesome to see. On top of that, Rocky Mountain is continuing with their fast track gas program. Last year, that was close to $250,000. So they're at almost $250,000 in helping out racers on this. So to me, those are two big things. Other notables, FMF is involved, and they've been involved for carry the one a lot of years. Dunlop is involved. Cometic is also involved. So to see these large names come in and offer these sponsorships and contingencies, to me, I'm really glad to see it because GNCC racing, it is not the most spectator-friendly form of racing on the planet. But boy, the drama that happens with this, the ability that people have with this, I mean, and it's with most forms of racing, you're going around a track that is turn one, maybe a little bit different every time you go through it, but for the most part, it's going to be the same thing every time. This, you are out, you're running it once, you're running it maybe twice, but it's just, you got to be good at reading the dirt, reading the lines, and going through this. So I love it, just the natural talent that you have to do this. I love watching stuff like this. So this, I am super stoked to see. It means more of this action to be coming in the near future. I'm really psyched.
Yeah, I agree. I love cross country racing also.
Yeah.
I love the fact that, it's always changing. I'm just a fan of dirt racing in general. It's an always changing surface. Weather dictates everything. The fact that if they run quads first before motorcycles, it's going to chew up certain trails. It's always a changing thing going on with cross country racing. I'm a huge fan. And you mentioned at the beginning or at the middle of your talk that Yamaha is ponying up almost $500,000 in contingency money, which is very exciting. It's rad to see them step up and put their money where their mouth is. Now, what does that really mean, though? That means people have to be racing Yamaha machines in order to get this contingency money. So it's kind of the same. You and I were talking before the show, and I'm going to go ahead and throw it on here. It's kind of similar to me as when Harley Davidson offers up almost $1 million in contingency money in AFT racing. Well, first you have to be racing a Harley Davidson in order to get the contingency money. So while it sounds really great, that means there has to be butts in the seats, and then those butts in the seats have to win in order to get it. So, I mean, but it still is rad. It still shows that they're paying attention to it, and hopefully it'll inspire more people to get on out there. If they've got Yamahas in their garage, or if they're thinking about jumping in, maybe they'll go check out a Yamaha bike in order to accomplish that on. So that's all good.
Yeah.
At GNCC, I say bravo to them. I think that that's very exciting, and I do love watching it. You're right. It's tough to spectate, but I do love watching the footage from it. So when people have GoPros and things, I always love checking it out.
Yeah, it's always great to see them out in the woods. And like I said, there's always going to be those people. The other thing is if someone chucks it in a GP race, it gets ugly. Someone hits a tree at 8 miles an hour, it gets pretty funny. And that's what this is the voice of experience too. Those are some of the things that we get to see in this, and it's one of the other thing that I love about it too is you are getting everyone out there. There's all sorts of skill levels out there doing this pretty much at the same time. I am not going to be riding with any of the MotoGP racers out there, but I can go hang with these guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've got several friends that go race dirt, and they always love it. It's always a great weekend. I'm half tempted to jump in sometimes and race that novice class myself because it seems like such a great time. Yep. So, very exciting news all the way across the board for all sorts of different types of racing for today's show. That seems to be the theme. That must mean riding season and racing season is around the corner, and I am here for it, Josh. I can't wait. The official kickoff here in the United States of motorcycle riding season takes place at Daytona Bike Week, which is just coming up right around the corner real fast. If we see any of you down there, make sure you come by. Come say, hey, I will be on the 5th. I will be at that Sons of Speed race. I always love seeing fans of the show stop by and say, hey, and we will have another great show waiting for you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Have an awesome rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.